Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of There's Just Something About Kansas City, where we talk about the people, places, and things that make this such a great place to live. You know, we're trying to get that chip off your shoulder here, Casey. You know what I mean? This is a great place. You don't have to worry about anywhere else in the country to live. This place is pretty doggone special. And so happy to have this guy with me in studio for the conversation today, Dayton Moore, former Royals GM and all-around good guy. How you doing?
Good, Frank. How about you? Everything's good. Yeah,
I'm doing great. How's the family? How's everybody doing?
Everybody's good. You
Yeah,
know, we're just plugging along and enjoying this next phase of our life. And but it's interesting. It's been a little bit of a transition for us, but all in all, we can't complain.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about that, but let's go back a little bit, okay? Born in Wichita,
Yeah.
right? And then you went to Moline, Illinois, I believe.
Yeah.
What precipitated the move from Wichita to?
You know, Frank, my mother grew up in a small town in south central Kansas by the name of Coldwater, actually, which is, it's 12 miles north of the Oklahoma line, west of Wichita, 170 miles or so west of Wichita.
Oh, wow.
And my father, when he got out of the service, took a job with Beechcraft right there in Wichita.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my parents were introduced by some mutual friends, and I was blessed to be born there, and that began my love affair with the Kansas City Royals. My mother and my grandmother were great Royals fans, and so. But as my father bettered our lives through aviation, he worked in aviation. He started off as an airline mechanic. It was the trade that he learned in the Navy, and we bounced around a little bit. It was all good. It was for our learning, and certainly we benefited from new places and meeting new people. And he was actually part of a group that helped start Chautauqua Airlines, which was located in Jamestown, New York. And
Lake Chautauqua is
Lake
up
Chautauqua,
there, right? Yeah,
exactly.
that's right.
It's just 90 miles, I think 90 miles south of Buffalo, 45 miles north of Erie, Pennsylvania. It's a lot of winter, a lot of snow, great for kids, not so much for parents because kids are, get a little stir
Kids
crazy.
don't care.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but my father, as he bettered our lives, we bounced around a little bit. He ended up at Moline, Illinois, Quad Cities, with Mississippi Valley Airlines. He became the director of maintenance there. Oh, wow. They 4 years later merged with Air Wisconsin. He was in management, so he lost his job and then took a job with Air Speciale, which is an airline manufacturer similar to Boeing. They make the Airbus, and that was in the Washington, D.C. area. Well, they relocated there, and they bought a home across the street from the Bixler family, and that's how I met my wife, Mary Ann Bixler.
There you go, right
so
across the street,
good.
huh?
Yeah, so it was all good.
It all just went from that point on.
Yeah.
Okay, so for you as a young kid, bouncing around high school to high school or whatever. And I know, we talked about this just before we started you always wanted to be an athlete of some kind. You just didn't know which way to go at first. I know the American Legion thing for you was great when you were in Moline. You won a state championship there. But the deal was, how many more? Did you play all the sports when you were growing up?
Growing up, I did. And then I realized, that baseball was going to be, my opportunity to play college baseball and hopefully professional baseball one day. I could never, ever imagine a day where I wasn't in baseball. I mean, I literally dreamt about it, thought about it, talked about it nonstop, to the point where many members of my family, thought that, I was pursuing a lifestyle that was just not going to be
unattainable.
To make a living and provide for a family. And of course, growing up in a blue-collar family, all farmers and mechanics.
Sure.
I mean, everybody, you worked. And I was working, but I just had such a passion and drive for sports and especially baseball. But, I played basketball, football, wrestling. By the time I was a senior, I didn't play football anymore. I didn't play because I just wanted to focus on baseball. And at the time, that was beginning a period of time where the football coach required you to lift weights in the summer. The basketball coach wanted you to play basketball all summer. And I wanted to do all of them, but at the end of the day, I just stuck with baseball, and it worked out.
It sort of did. Tell us a story a little bit about watching the 1985 World Series from I-70.
Surreal moment. I get goosebumps thinking about it. I really do. Of course, I grew up a Royals fan.
How old were you at that time?
I was 18 years old.
That's what I thought. You were a senior in high school.
1985. And so I was attending Garden City Community College playing baseball. And we were a buddy of mine, David Larson, who obviously he was at Garden City as well. We were both grew up or went to high school in the Quad Cities. He went to Rock Island High School. I was Moline High School, intense rivals. And but we were roommates at Garden City. And we were coming back from fall break from the Quad Cities to Garden City to finish up, the fall semester. And Game 7 of the World Series was going on. We decided to stop. We were thinking we were going to get tickets or buy tickets.
Yeah, sure. The police are going to be. It was like 150. I'm thinking tickets. The police are going to be out here to get us.
Well, we were going to. Someone's going to scalp tickets or whatever. We didn't know anything about it, but they were like $150, $170. We couldn't afford that, and but we noticed that there was a lot of people congregating off of I-70. And they had grills there, and some had battery-operated TVs, and we just said, you know what, let's just stay and watch the game. And so we did. We could see everything other than Lonnie Smith in left field. We couldn't see the left fielder.
Okay.
But we could see everything that transpired, and I remember, once the game concluded, we got into Garden City about 7:30 the next morning. I don't know how we made it because we were tired, but what a thrill it was, and to be there when the Royals won their first ever World Series championship.
Yeah. I can remember when I drove cross country from Philadelphia to San Francisco. I was going to change careers. I wanted to get into broadcasting. I coached or whatever. And I came by the Truman Sports Complex. And I remember I took a picture. And I still have the picture to this day. But I take a picture and I wrote on it, I said, on this little journal I was keeping as I went across country, I wrote on. I said, "Who knows? Maybe I'll work here someday."
Yeah.
Did you ever think you're standing up there going, "Maybe I'll play for them someday"?
Well, no, I don't know if I ever did that, but I did have a very surreal moment. When we were before Game 7 of the World Series in 2014, we were playing the Giants.
Right.
I remember sitting in the dugout and gazing off into left field beyond I-70, and and I don't know why. I wasn't intentionally thinking about it that day when I woke up, but I happened to be sitting in the first base dugout, and all of a sudden that moment hit me, and I just said, you know what, it's pretty cool that God worked this out in our lives, that we could experience this. What a great blessing it was.
Yeah, when we talked to Kathy Nelson, she said when the draft was here, it was after the championship parades, the Royals in 15, then 2 Chiefs, and all of a sudden the draft's here. And she actually went back, so they started to cry.
Yeah.
Because she said, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
Me, and she's a Kansas Citian, and just everything that had happened to her. And you have that same moment, that's a real moment where you're staring up there to where you were standing back in 1985, and all of a sudden, you don't have to buy a ticket to get in. Okay. Yeah. You are the guy at that point. So then Garden City Community College, and then the recruiting comes. Yeah. I know you end up at George Mason University, but how many others were you considering other schools as well?
I had 3 scholarship offers. I had one at Grand Canyon, Gil Stafford, who was a baseball coach there, and then Chuck Anderson at Florida Southern. And they were all recruiting me. I went out and played that summer in the Clark Griffith Collegiate League, which was in the Washington, D.C. area. And I'd never been out east, even though my family had moved out there, I had mentioned, but I had graduated from high school and never really spent much time there, Christmas, Thanksgiving, that type of deal. And but I enjoyed it that summer. Billy Brown was the head baseball coach at George Mason, and he was very intentional. As I said, I met Mary Ann that summer as well. Yeah. She was at Radford University, so we weren't going to be attending the same school. But that had maybe a little bit to do with it. But as I was going through the recruiting process, I told Gil Stafford, I told Chuck Anderson, I told Billy Brown, look, I'm going to play as long as I can. I want to be a major league player. I said, but when my time is done, I want to coach. And I'm not asking for assurances here, but just as I'm a player and as I'm in this system, please consider me as a future coach, and please come alongside of me and help mold me and see the game from maybe a coach's perspective as well, although I am a player. And Gil Stafford and Chuck Anderson, they heard what I said, but I felt like Billy Brown didn't dismiss it, and he was really he said, "Look, I will give you opportunity. You do what you need to do here, and you go about your business the right way, and go to class, and be a good leader, and all this stuff. And I'll make sure there's some opportunity for you at some level when your time is done." And so I decided to go to George Mason. I committed to go to George Mason, and then my dad took a job with Continental Airlines, which is now United. You know, they had merged, and so they moved to Houston. And so I was there for literally, that summer, and he moved the family to Houston, Texas, that fall. And so I never had an opportunity to kind of live in the same area as my family. But it was all good.
Yeah, that's a little bit different commute from George Mason to Houston than it was otherwise. Yeah. Okay, so when did you realize maybe the career of playing isn't going to happen? I mean, did you have a high school that the majors are interested? At a junior college,
so I was, I went to every tryout camp imaginable out of high school, and the Cincinnati Reds were the team that was most interested in me. I wanted to sign with them out of high school. They flat out told me that we don't think you're ready, and they sent me to the junior college in Kansas.
Okay, so
I was actually looking to go to University of Missouri. Gene McCarter, long-term, he had recruited me, and I had committed there actually. And I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I remember telling them that, look, I'm not going to come, I'm not going to show up, I'm going to go to Garden City. And the reason I went to Garden City is because they played 100-plus games a year. Junior college baseball, you were eligible to get drafted every single year. As you know, you go to college, and it's after 3 years after your junior year. And I just wanted to play, Frank. And, I didn't grow up, as I said, my family was very blue-collar. Neither my mother or my father went to college. I was the first person on either side of my family to go to college. Education, I wouldn't say it wasn't overly stressed in our family. Just hard work, being a good person, that type of deal. And so I wasn't very academic minded, if you will.
Sure.
And that wasn't necessarily odd at the time, because I feel like all my friends, we just loved sports, and we loved just activities, and we loved being outside, and we loved competition, and then when I didn't get drafted out of Garden City, obviously I chose George Mason, and I felt like I would get an opportunity to play. I didn't after my senior year. I signed with an independent pro team and went and played with the Erie Sailors. I was released out of there, and I remember calling Billy Brown at George Mason. I said, Billy, I just got released, and he said, well, if you want to coach, come on and join us. And so I packed my stuff. I went the next day, and I went to work for Billy Brown.
Right, and that's the situation. I think, is that where you began to think, or at least the seed had to be playing in the back of your mind about mentoring.
Yeah.
And because he mentored you, you actually asked for help.
Yeah.
He ended up mentoring you, and then you went on from there. And we'll talk about C in the major leagues and all the things that you do. But that had to be where the seed was planted, right?
It was, and I just first of all, I felt like that to be a great coach, I needed to coach in 100-plus games a year, and Billy was giving me an opportunity to coach third base, work with the infielders, and then he also gave me an opportunity to coach in the summer leagues, which at the time was kind of rare. I think being in a mid-major program, he allowed me the opportunity to do that. Plus, he wasn't paying me much. But if I was a part of a major program, you'd be recruiting all summer. But Billy allowed me the opportunity to coach in the Shenandoah Valley League in Winchester, Virginia, which was a high-level collegiate league at the time. And
It was the name of that team, the Winchester Royals.
Yeah, the Winchester Royals. Yeah, and so so I'd coach there. I'd coach there and be a part of some of the best college players in the country. And then I was interacting with some of the elite college coaches in the country and getting to network and know them. And so I coached there for 5 years at George Mason. I had a couple opportunities to scout, and I turned them down because I just wanted to continue to pursue the coaching deal. And then the Braves called. And they were very persistent, and I decided to join them. But I was only going to scout for 4 years and get back into college coaching. But I felt like I needed to refine my evaluation skills at a very high level. And I felt like even though I would take maybe a sidestep out of the collegiate game by learning to evaluate from some of the best of the best. And, of course, the Braves were the model organization of all of baseball right there in the mid-'90s. And to be around some of these guys like Paul Snyder and Bill LaJoy and Donnie Williams and Jose Martinez and John Sherholtz and Bobby Cox and all these people, I could learn some just great, terrific things that would prepare me to be a better coach someday. And then, so one thing led to another. Next thing you know, they asked me to come to Atlanta to be the assistant director of scouting. We decided to do that, and then John, put me in all kinds of different
Yeah,
positions.
John Shearholtz,
Yeah,
of course, the
put me in-
former
yeah,
Royals GM.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he believed in me. I'm thankful for that. He gave me opportunity to do a lot of different things in the game. And I think I was the first ever professional scouting director and did international scouting at the same time, which had never been done. And John just kind of let me kind of pioneer that.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot.
See, people are going to wonder, okay, so he's coaching at George Mason. He wants to be a coach, but the Atlanta Braves call him, and he's thinking about it, whereas most other people would have gone, oh, my God, it's the Atlanta Braves. I'm going to Major League
I actually turned him
Baseball.
down. Turned him down at first. And then Roy Clark, who was one of my mentors, one of the best scouts I've ever been around, Roy Clark called me like 30 minutes later after I got off the phone with Paul Snyder, telling him that, look, you know what, I don't want to move to Atlanta, because I knew in the back of my mind, I don't know if this is what I definitely want to do. And Roy Clark said, you are the dumbest person I've ever met. And he had some harsh words. It wasn't dumb. It was dumb.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And I know you don't use that kind of language.
I said, what are you talking about? He said, you got a chance to go down to Atlanta and work with Paul Snyder and John Shearholtz and Bobby Cox. And at the time, Frank, there was only 6 people in that front office.
Wow.
And I was the 7th. And so front offices were everybody was involved in everything. And you got exposure to a lot of different things. And so I thought about it, and I called Paul, and Paul said, well, let's talk about it a month from now. And we did. And so I showed up in Atlanta. I think it was August 10th of 1996. And
Okay.
I want to say it was the first day that Andrew Jones broke into the major leagues.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, that's how it began in
Yeah.
Atlanta.
And then in it started in 96 or it actually started in 94, right?
Yeah.
And then 96, then you go 2002, you become director of player personnel
Mm-hmm.
for the Atlanta Braves. And then when did you start? And I'm sure it was John that was talking to you about it the whole time. When did you start to aspire to be John Shearholtz with another team or with the Atlanta Braves?
Great question.
Wherever.
Frank, I never really thought about it. The first opportunities we had to be a general manager, one was in Boston and one was in Arizona, and I turned them down because I loved doing what I was doing. I love scouting, I love player development. I love the Atlanta Braves. John Shearholtz was giving me all kinds of autonomy to make decisions in scouting and player development. And then the Royals called. And well, actually, John said, look, let's meet for lunch. And I didn't think it was odd because we'd meet for lunch at least twice a week or whatever. And so we met at the CNN Center, and he said, David Glass is going to come. He wants to meet you at Peachtree DeKalb Airport in the next couple of days. He wants to talk to you about being the general manager of the Kansas City Royals. And I said, well, John, that's great. That was my boyhood team. I know you've got a great affection for the Royals as well, John. I said, he's one of the most successful businessmen in our country. He said, and I said, John encouraged, just meet with him. You give him some ideas, whatever. John never thought I'd take the job. I never thought I'd take the job. But Frank, as I sat down and I began to meet and talk with David Glass, I found him to be a very humble man. He talked all the time about family. He talked about the fans of Kansas City. He talked about how embarrassed he was that the team was losing. He said things like, I don't know how to build a baseball team. We need somebody to come in here. And he said, I want to make this a model organization. And I began to say, I like this person. And I want to do well for him. I'm probably never going to come to Kansas City, but I found myself kind of rooting for him. He was just a very humble guy. And, and so after about 10-day period, I decided, actually the day we accepted the job, earlier that morning, Shearholtz had said, look, you're going to be the GM here in Atlanta after the 2008 season, and I'm ready to make an announcement. He said, we don't want to lose you. And so I called Marianne, and I said, sweetheart, we're just going to stay right here in Atlanta. And there was a sense of peace I could tell from her, not wanting to move. But then I didn't have the same peace. I was like, what are we going to win here for 28 years in Atlanta? Yeah, John's going to be the president. I'm going to be the GM. That's great. I love it here. Royals are my boyhood team. I didn't want to call and tell David Glass no. I mean, I really didn't. I said, you know what? Let's just go do it. Let's go do something special. Let's see if we can win here in Kansas City. Everybody I sought counsel from, Frank, told me, don't go to Kansas City. You can't win in Kansas City. They said the owner's not going to spend money.
Right.
The community is very disappointed in the team and ownership and all this. Don't go, don't go. And he just said, you know what, let's go try it. Let's go see if we can do it. And But I'm going to tell you why ultimately we did it. I felt so strongly in how I was raised. My mother, my grandmother, Royals fans, I knew their heart and how much they loved the team. And I just figured everybody was like that in Kansas City. They love the Royals, and I felt like, you know what, I'm one of them, and we can do this all together. And building the team, which is different than rebuilding a team, I must tell you, after going through what I went through the last 4 or 5 years. But
that's for sure.
But building it was fun, and you know, the reason we won here in Kansas City was because of the environment, the fans, the support, the culture.
Right.
And it was everybody coming together. And I felt from the beginning that we could do that. I mean, you were always very kind to me. And there was nothing to report good about the team. But when I would see you, you were kind to me. You were upbeat. You always had a positive word. I don't know if you felt that.
No, I didn't.
But you were positive.
You,
you were
right,
positive.
Exactly,
and people, you know, I felt that, you know what, let's just be transparent, tell everybody what we're going through. And let's just try to get everybody on board and see how we can do this together. And we did.
It's amazing. You come to a team like the Royals and everybody says, don't take it. I'm sure when you turn down the Boston Red Sox, they're going, John, what are you doing? That's the Boston Red Sox. I mean, you're going to get everything you need in Boston, and we're not so sure you're going to get everything you need in Kansas City. But was it something, it was a... you knew the history, obviously, and George Brett was still involved in the whole deal. But the idea of taking something basically from scratch, because where they were was scratch.
That's right.
Okay, at that point, and to try to rebuild and get back to that young kid who was standing up on I-70
That's right.
In 1985.
And I think that was part of it, Frank. I mean, that was one of the things. I mean,
it was the challenge is what I'm trying to say.
The challenge and part, I mean, and you can say, I mean, some people don't. I believe the greatest leaders ever have trusted their heart, their passion, their desire, their love and commitment for what they're doing. And I knew we were going to have that. And I still have that. I still have that love and that passion and that commitment, you know, for the Royals. And I can't help, but it's part of who I am. That's in my DNA. And I just knew that we would have that. And because that, I just think the drive and perseverance and commitment, things that people necessarily can't measure, the data can't tell you about, I think it means a whole lot, because I think when you have passionate people who love what they do, you're going to have a group of people around you that are going to take that same passion and drive. And I knew that we could model the behavior that we wanted. I knew we were going to be able to model that, the behavior that we wanted in our front office and our coaches and our players, but I had to model it. And the only thing we ever tried to do is I love baseball and I love the Royals. And I wanted to share that with every person in this community, every person in this region, and every person in the country. I love baseball, I love the Royals, and I want you to love baseball, and I want you to love the Royals.
Yeah, or rekindle that love for the Royals at that time. Right. Okay, so I've been involved in some bizarre situations. I've never been in anything more bizarre than June 8th, 2006. You are hired as the Royals GM, okay? And this is, I don't know if it's unbeknownst to you at that time. Did you know what was going to transpire during that press conference when they're introducing you?
Before the press conference, I did this interview with ESPN, and I did a couple other, you know, with ESPN, and I forget the gal's name. I can see her face, doggone it. She was always very good to me. And, you know, when we had the baby Braves come up in Atlanta, it was a big national story, and ESPN was involved, and it was the same gal anyway. So we had kind of a relationship or whatever, and she did a very nice interview and what have you. And then the cameraman says to me, he says, "Congratulations, you're a general manager of a major league team, but it's more like a minor league team."
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. And I'm like...
The camera guy said that?
I said, that was kind of off. I mean, that's a weird thing. And she jumped him. She said, "That's not necessary," whatever. And I'm going, boy, there's a little friction in here.
Yeah,
now, I don't know.
What's going on?
I don't know who the cameraman was. Probably local. It was probably a local maybe a local person that was
Maybe.
just, yeah, it
Could have been.
could have been,
Could
yeah.
have been, yeah.
Now that I reflect back, and I can't remember who it was, but no, I didn't.
Hopefully it wasn't one of ours.
No, but
We were at Fox 4
yeah,
at the time.
but it's and I just remembered, I like, man, there might be something going on here. And then we go on the press conference, and there was an intensity and a just an attitude and just a kind of like a hatred type feeling about what was going on.
Well, the problem was no one had talked to the owner.
Yeah,
Everybody wouldn't talk to him for
yeah,
literally years.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like he was
know.
never available. He just
Yeah.
never made himself available.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he comes out to introduce you, and you're sitting there, and I can see the expression on your face. And all of a sudden, all the questions are going to David Glass.
Yeah.
They're going, "What are you going to do? You're going to spend money? What is going on?"
Right,
and
right.
they're getting all these questions
Yeah.
out that they hadn't been. And you're sitting there, looking around like, is he the GM and I'm the owner? What is going
You know
on
what?
here?
It was
That was so bizarre.
Yeah, and then I remember the one thing I will tell you is to speak to David Glass. Okay, so there was I forget who it was. There was a couple media
Yeah.
people that their credentials were suspended.
Yeah,
And
they
I can't-
were.
I can't remember
Yeah.
who it was. But
It was Bob Fesco.
okay, that's right.
And then
Bob.
the woman was, oh gosh, I'm going to forget her name. Yeah, the two of them
Yeah. Okay.
ended up
So anyway,
getting,
I remember.
getting their media
I remember
credentials
like a week
suspended.
later we had this meeting. Right, we're sitting in the office and
You didn't know they had their
no
credentials
but,
suspended.
But David
right?
Glass says to me, he says there's like 6 or 7 people in the room, and he's going around and he's asking people what they think, and he comes to me and he says, "What do you think about suspending their? Do you think we should have done that, whatever?" And I said, "Mr. Glass, with all due respect, sir, we have so much more to worry about than what the media is going to portray us.
Right.
Who were what credentials that we're suspending, what have you." I said, I don't care what you do, truthfully, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. I wouldn't suspend their credentials. He said, "I agree 100%." Is what he said, and I can't remember what the outcome was after that, but that's when I knew.
Yeah, they're reinstated.
Yeah, and that's when I knew. I said, you know what, this guy, he's very thoughtful. He's not concerned about anything other than let's just do the hard work. Let's build an infrastructure. Let's build a foundation. Let's get a model organization going here. Let's come together. Let's forget about the noise. It is what it is in professional sports, as you know. If you decide that you're going to put that uniform on or you're going to accept a position with a major league team, you got to be able to manage, criticism. You can't take it personal. That's just part of it. It's not personal. It's just not. People have a right to view the team or have an opinion about the team. That's what makes sports go. We all have an opinion about the team, how the team should be built, the decisions that should be made, and that's just part of it. And that's what makes sports go.
Right. And I think the perception was back then that David Glass did not give you the monetary means in order to do this, I just want to say quicker or faster or whatever it was. You had a lot to do. You had a lot to build through scouting and drafting and then development, research and development, and then bring them up to the major league level because they had been going downhill for so long. So there was a lot to do. Did you feel you're getting support at that time?
Yeah, I always heard the stories, okay, whether you wanted to hire scouts, coaches, or what have you. But we had all of that settled before I came to Kansas City. I told Mr. Glass there was a few non-negotiables, and we had to be able to have a budget in scouting and player development that was amongst the best in baseball, and he allowed that to happen.
And that was a Braves situation.
It was.
Atlanta
And
Braves,
we added a minor league team. We added an affiliate, which at the time was an extra almost $1 million a year to operate. He didn't even hesitate on that. I talked about the importance of paying our employees at a very high level because I knew in a small market the economics of the game wasn't going to allow us to keep our elite players long term. But so I didn't want to have a lot of turnover with our directors and high levels of leadership. I wanted to pay them at the very highest level.
You wanted to keep some stability there.
We needed to. And so he said, absolutely, that makes perfect. He didn't debate me one. And I'm like, this is too good to be true. I mean, he's allowing me to do whatever. So we had a lot of those things. But I had heard the exact same things that you're sharing with me prior to coming to Kansas City. And truthfully, that's why it was not necessarily a destination point for me, even though it was my boy team, even though my emotion and my heart was taking me to Kansas City.
Right.
I wanted to get all this settled. And Mr. Glass was, he was just whatever you need to do, whatever you need to do. He laid out what he thought the payroll would be for the next 5 years at the major league level. It certainly wasn't middle of the pack. It was still, but we weren't ready to
contend anyway, right?
Elite major. That being said, we went out and signed Gilmesh right away.
Yeah.
And we did that because Gilmesh was 27 years old, entering the prime of his career. He was a highly sought after free agent. We sold our tail off to get him here to Kansas City. I felt like he could be a part of what we were going to do, and we thought we would take the pressure off Zach Greinke, allow Zach to just kind of mature and kind of be under the radar, which it worked out that way, and that was kind of the plan. And then Zach wins the Cy Young, and we're able to execute a deal to get Escobar and Lorenzo Cain. And Jake Odorizzi
for Zach, that was a tough decision.
It was.
To make, too.
It was a tough decision.
Yeah.
And Zach had a limited no trade. And so Milwaukee was one of the teams that was on the no trade, and so that was a whole process of trying to develop that relationship with Zach. I'm glad we had a solid relationship, which allowed us to talk through why, this deal is important for both. And, we had some basic trust there with the player, and, he allowed the deal to go through, and I'm forever thankful for Zach.
Yeah, right. That was that's what ignited the whole thing. The thing for me for Zach, which I will never forget, is we know he had the anxiety issues, and like you said, you wanted Gilmesh for a reason. When Zach came back to the Royals, we were at spring training. I still remember sitting in that room, and Zach came up and sat down. He's got anxiety issues and the whole thing. Now he's been through counseling and the whole deal, and he sat there and he answered. I was so impressed. He answered every question, and he just sat there and he just answered all the questions and the whole thing. And when he left that day, I just went, boy, that kid's special. There's just something about his character and the way he approached it. To me, I was blown away by Zach Greinke.
I love Zach Greinke.
Yeah.
I love his family.
I'm not even talking about his pitching.
Yeah, I love his heart. I love his genuineness. I've always pulled for him. There's very few times that he's pitched in his career where I haven't paid attention or watched him because I love what he's able to do. I love guys that can make pitches and execute pitches and set pitches up. I mean, it's fun to watch him work. And, I'm so proud of him. I'm thankful we were able to bring him back. I'm very happy that he's the father and the husband that he is right now, because knowing him, in the early days, I mean, that wasn't a vision of his. And to watch him mature, it's been really, really special. And, after I got fired by the Royals, I was sitting in my home watching Cleveland and the Yankees play. It was an afternoon game, and season obviously was over for the Royals, and there was a knock on my door, and it was Zach Greinke.
Oh, wow.
And, he came in, and we sat and watched the game together, and we sat there for about an hour and a half, and it was just one of the most special times of my baseball life here in Kansas City, just because of that's what it's all about.
Oh, yeah.
17 years ago, spending time with Zach, with his career, watching him evolve as a person and a professional, and then for him to come over and just spend time with me was pretty neat.
Right. So you trade Greinke, and you end up with Cain and Escobar basis. Now we're starting to build. We don't know yet. We don't know really who these guys are. We know they're pretty good players, but we're just not sure here in Kansas City who these guys are. And you got rid of Zach Greinke, which was tough to do. Then you get 2012, I think you get Shields and Wade Davis.
Yep.
More building blocks. And then in 2013, I think you had the best record since 94. You're 86 and 76. But it's crazy. You're 10 games over 500, but you're third in the American League Central at that time.
And we had the best record the second half in the American League.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You ran it at that point. So you get into 2014, and everybody is okay. Right. All right, we're ready to go. And you get to the All-Star break, and everybody wants your head, and they want Ned Yost's head on a spike sitting out in front of.
I wanted my head too. Okay, I was about as frustrated as you could be because, I mean, really, Ned and I both were. You know? And it was just. Anyway, go ahead, Frank.
No, that was it. That's where we are right now. We're halfway through 14.
We were just, the team was underachieving, and the expectations were high. And as we all know, a lot of times when those expectations are high, when you haven't won for so many years, and you start, the frustration kind of seeps in a little bit, and everybody kind of loses their focus. They start blaming one another, and there's two things that happen, and I haven't shared this publicly a lot, but maybe at all. But our coaching staff really wasn't getting along at the time.
Okay.
And our players,
that could happen.
Our players weren't really getting along. We're all in the spirit of we're trying to get better. Okay, we're just frustrated. We're just trying, and sometimes you get in a little blame game and
finger pointing.
Finger point. There
sure.
you go. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
And so I got our major league coaching staff together, and I said, you know why our players aren't on the same page? It's because you guys aren't on the same page. You guys aren't getting along. You guys aren't working together. I'm in the coach's room. I come in there after batting practice or at lunch or after the game, and we got pockets, people talking about different things. We're not together. And they just looked at me and they said, you know what? You're right. And so once the staff started getting together, the players started getting together, everybody started taking responsibility. Of course, acquiring Raul Ibanez was a big part of that as well, even though he wasn't going to play. I don't even know why. We had no spot for Raul Ibanez. He clearly couldn't play the outfield anymore. He wasn't an impactful hitter, but he was such an impactful person. And I remember sitting there in the first base dugout after we had acquired him, and Mr. Glass said, "Can you explain to me why we brought in Raul Ibanez?" I said, "Mr. Glass,
Can you explain to me why I'm spending money on this guy?"
I said, "I have no idea." I said, "Really? I don't know where he's going to play. I don't know if he's going to do anything for us offensively. I don't know where he's going to play defensively." I said, "But Mr. Glass, I just feel like we need this type of veteran presence with our team, and there's no team that was as athletic as our team." With Hosmer and Moose and Escobar and Kane and even Salvi was as good as athlete as anybody, and he's in the catching position. I mean, the guy's strong. He's got great hands and great feet, and we had Dyson and all these guys that were athletes, and we just needed somebody to kind of breathe life on them and just say, hey, you guys are pretty good. Let's just go out and just win a pitch. Let's win an inning. And then we'll worry about winning the game, and let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Right, and you had all the pieces, like building a car. Had all the pieces, just had to put them in the right spot in order to make that car go forward. So,
that's right.
And they really did take off then at the end.
But we were that was the first time in 2014 that Mary Ann, my wife, is so emotionally stable and such an encourager and the perfect spouse, especially for baseball. And it was the first time that she was kind of like I don't know if it's going to work out here either, and it's just because the expectations were, and we were frustrated, and then all of a sudden we took off, and next thing you know, we had a pretty good run.
Yeah, the postseason was absolutely crazy in 14.
Yeah,
the Houston game, I just go. It just all the way through, and all the way through the World Series. This is the team of destiny. And then you run into San Francisco.
Yeah, and I'm working with
on an even year.
Yeah,
bad year to get San Francisco because they win all the World Series on even years.
I mean, I thought player for player we were better.
Yes,
but, Madison Bumgarner just stepped up and just had a dominant year. I mean, dominant series and that we could do. But I thought we outplayed them, and really, if Joe Panic doesn't make the diving play up the middle and turn the double play.
Right.
With I think Haas was on first, Kane was hitting, and Kane, as you know, is tough to double up, but he makes this diving play up the middle and flips it and to Crawford, and they execute a 4-6-3 double play. I mean, we have first and third, no outs there, and I think we win the ball game. In fact, Bruce Bochy, who I'm working with now, obviously was the manager with San Francisco, and I always tell Boach the story. He saved me from a tattoo because I told Mike Moustakas, I said, if we win the World Series, I'll get a tattoo, Moose, because Moose is always telling me I need to get a tattoo.
Yeah, right.
So I always tell Boach, I said, Boach, the fact that you guys beat us, you saved me from getting a tattoo. So,
well, the thing, and everybody hates these two words, Madison Bumgarner. His performance in Game 7 was I mean, it was mind-boggling what he did. In Game 7 to pick up that ball after pitching in Game 5, and then picking up that ball, and when he pitched that one inning to get him out of the inning, he doesn't go into, and you can tell right away. Went in, sat down, put his coat on, and put the ice on his shoulder, but he wasn't going anywhere. And I'm going, he's coming back out.
Yeah.
And he kept coming back out and kept coming back out. It was one of the most impressive performances. Otherwise, other than him, like you said, you win the World Series and you go back to back in 14
I believe so.
and 15.
Yeah, I believe so. And so it was heartbreaking. But I remember going home that night after we had lost, and just being in Atlanta all those years, knowing that you got to get a break or two along the way. And we always had a good team. We won one World Series during that journey, and I knew that this was our opportunity, right? And I remember Gene Watson, our director of professional scouting, called me on the way home, and he said, "Man, you should be so proud. You should, this is awesome what we did." And I'm like, "Proud of what, Gene? I mean, what am I supposed to be proud of? I mean, we just lost the freaking World Series. I don't know if we'll ever get back here again.
Yeah.
This is what we set out to do, And I started screaming at him, and I felt terrible afterwards. But Gene Watson and I had that type of relationship. He was the one person that, he'd never go to HR on me, put it that way, okay? So I could vent to him, right?
I wish I had a few friends like that in the business.
Right.
I was it.
So I could vent with him. And then the next day, I just remember what a lonely feeling waking up. And we had all those fans there that came out, and we had kind of a, just a thank you kind of an event. Fans wanted to still be a part of it. And Mr. Glass spoke, I spoke, I think Ned spoke as well. And I remember looking at Mr. Glass, and I said, "Mr. Glass, I apologize we couldn't get this thing done for you." And he said, we're going to get it done. He said, "You let me know what you need." He said, "We're going to get it done next year. And I appreciate you, and let's go to work." And we met right after that, and we started mapping out what we wanted to do and how we were going to finish this off in 2015. And he supported our moves, and we spent some money in the off season. And we took a risk on Kendrys Morales, who a lot of people in the game thought was done. We had a couple scouts step up and say he wasn't. Analytics didn't like him. And then we had Alex Rios, who I knew was a winner, could do some things at the bottom of our lineup and have a presence, and we needed a presence at the bottom of our lineup. Yeah. And he'd never won a World Series. He was hungry to win a World Series. He had a great career, and we brought him in as well. So we brought in some winning type guys, veteran guys that we knew were going to give us the right stability and blend in well with our current group.
Yeah, and for me, I always looked at, when I look back at 14 and 15, I always looked at 14, I said, losing the World Series the way you lost in Game 7, took San Francisco right to the wire, propelled you to win in 2015. I always wondered, if Panic doesn't make the double play, Royals win, do you start out 2015 the way you start out, angry, throwing it, throwing pitchers or throwing at batters, getting in fights, and you just rocket out to the lead in 2015. Yeah. You might not have had that motivation.
Good point. You never
going
know.
into 15.
I like to think we would, but you're right. You don't. You never know. And so, as you bring up, the circumstances, the challenges that you face, oftentimes are the great catalysts and prepare you to go above and beyond and reach deeper and end up, being who you ultimately, are.
Yeah. And they jumped out and never looked back.
I knew that team was going to win. I tell you how I felt the team was going to win. Spring training in 2015, our first game, we're playing the Texas Rangers. It's the first inning. Eric Hosmer's on first base, and Salvi hits a ground ball base hit into left field. And it's a little bit to the right of the left fielder. Hosmer goes first to third, slides head first.
In a spring training game.
Yeah, bang, bang play. He's just busting his tail to get to third base with one out so he can be in, obviously you got a much better chance to score a run when you're in third base with one out or less. And he goes first to third and dives in head first, and I'm going, what is he doing? But way to go.
Yeah.
We're going to win.
Yeah, that was
And then the other part of that is I remember this at spring training, there's 7 days to go in spring training. Ned has the group doing a team fundamental. They're doing first and third defense, and they're doing rundown plays. And Salvador Perez is 7 days to go in spring training when everybody's checked out, usually ready to go. Mm-hmm. Salvador Perez is managing those fundamentals like it was the most important thing in the history of the world. And his energy level, his enthusiasm, and I'm going, this team's got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you finish with the best record, 28 games over 500. You go into the playoffs, and the playoffs now compared to 2014 are way different.
Yeah.
I mean, now all of a sudden, you go through Toronto, and am I getting the order right? Yeah. You end up going through. No, Toronto was second. You go through Houston. With
Houston,
the short
Toronto,
series,
yeah.
3-2.
Yeah.
Then you go through Toronto 4-2, and then you beat the Mets 4-1 in World Series.
That's right.
It was like you from the beginning of season, from the beginning of spring training, very first game, all the way through that time. What an incredible run, back-to-back American League championships, and then 2 World Series appearances, obviously, and then 1 World Championship. So
no doubt
that was
and it was just like you said, a hungry group of players, and the thing that acquiring Zobrist and acquiring Cueto during that trade deadline really kind of, I think, propelled us and it came at a high cost. We gave up some good players. Sean Manaea is still pitching effectively in the major leagues and has been a top mid rotation starter in the major leagues. And we knew we were only going to have Zobrist and Cueto they were rental players, and we weren't going to probably re-sign them long term. But acquiring those 2 players, I think, really gave our current roster a psychological lift at the time.
They needed it at that time.
I think so. I mean, I think it just said, look, okay, now we got a chance to match up against everybody, and we don't have to overachieve.
Right.
Just reach our play at our custom level, and we got a chance to match up with everybody.
Yeah, I love Johnny Cueto. He was a piece of work, and the deal was he was a postseason pitcher. You know what I mean? He was.
That's right. He's a big game guy.
Right. When he was in just. Like it was his normal spot in the rotation. On a big, sometimes he'd get batted around. You're going, what do we got this guy?
And
for?
the other part of that was it was his free agent year.
Yeah,
he's trying to conserve pitches. He knew, and we knew that other teams were scouting him, for the playoffs. So he was pitching a little differently. We knew we were going to win our division, and so it was frustrating at times because he was getting hit around. But when we dug a little bit deeper, I mean, Ned was protecting his health. Just getting him into the playoffs and knowing that once the playoffs begin, he's going to be a different guy. He obviously had a stinker there in Toronto.
Yeah.
But I mean, how he pitched against the Astros and how he pitched against the Mets. I mean, without him,
Yeah.
And Volke, Edison Volquez and what he did was special as well. Chris Young, who I'm working for now in Texas. I mean, I maintain that Chris Young was the MVP of our pitching staff in 2015 because he was a starter. He closed out games. He pitched middle relief.
He did anything you wanted him to do.
He did in New York. He won the game in New York for us. He pitched in relief in Toronto. When we had the rain delay. I mean, he did everything that we needed him to do. And what a headstrong, mentally tough competitor that he is.
He was an interesting interview too. I'll tell you that. He was. He'd just get his back, look at you like this, and go, "Hey." All right, buddy. Hey, you. Listen to me. Come here, Shorty. Get over here for a second. I'm going to talk because he was such a big guy anyway. Okay, so we go to 2016, and 2020 hindsight, everybody will say, well, they should have after 15. They knew they only had Hosmus.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Hosmus. Well, we could probably say Hosmus.
Yeah.
Hosmer, Moustakas, and they only have him for 2 more years. They're not going to end up signing him long term. They're going to end up going out in free agency, and the Royals probably are not going to sign these guys. Or if they do, they're going to sign one.
That's right.
They're going to lose the core of this team. Was there any thought ever cross your mind of time to trade those players?
I was provided a lot of input and counsel and advice internally and externally from my colleagues in the game that the right thing to do would be to trade those players.
Yeah.
For the sustainability, the success, the long-term success of the franchise, I wasn't going to do that for our fans, and I wasn't going to do that for Mr. Glass. Mr. Glass would have supported it. It wasn't the right thing to do for our fans. Frank, you can never stop looking at this game from the eyes of your youth.
Right.
And I don't care what you say. I'm different that way. People can debate that. It wouldn't have been the right thing to do for our fans. I wanted to give our players an opportunity as well. Now, at the end of the day, I love players, but I know how they're wired. true. I mean, they wanted to be together, but you come to a point in time in your career, now you want to get a big long-term contract. You want to do different things.
Take care of my family.
Take care of my family.
Right. I've won.
You know the deal. You've
Right.
been around,
I've won back-to-back American League Championship Series and a World Series.
You've been around as many players as I have. You know their hearts. And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong. It's human nature. But I wasn't going to do that. I just wasn't. If that was going to be, but I knew the bill would come due at some point, and I knew we were going to have to go through it all over again. And let me say this: it's managing a building process, and then managing through a winning cycle. A building cycle, a winning cycle, and then managing through a rebuilding cycle. All three of them are very different.
Right.
Building is really rewarding and gratifying. You just because you can see it, right?
Sure.
You can just start seeing it and you feel good about it. And then when you're trying to manage through the winning cycle, there's an intensity level. There's an edginess.
Right. You're not looking at developing players. You're looking at we got to win this game tonight.
Exactly, exactly. And there's an intensity level that's hard to explain. And then you go through the building cycle. That's something that I'd never ever been through. I mean, that was hard. That was very, very difficult. And then obviously we had ownership change that took place during that.
Yes.
Which I wasn't anticipating that at all. I mean, Mr. Glass never felt that there would ever be a scenario where he or his family would sell the team. And then he got sick, and it became very clear to him that Dan and Dana
weren't going to do it.
Yeah, they just they were ready to move on.
I don't really think they were baseball people anymore.
Well, you know what, Frank? I think that their family was so tight, and without their patriarch, without Mr. Glass, I think they just felt it wouldn't be the same.
Right.
And they wanted to move on.
Yeah. So then, just before the end, John Sherman, when he comes in as the new owner. You're out as GM. This is 2022. You're out as GM, but he makes you president of baseball operations, and you think, okay, this is what happened. John Shearholz went through the same thing. This is GM, and he became president of baseball operations in Atlanta. And so you probably thought your career at that point was going to just move on with the roles in a different capacity.
Yeah, and that's what I was wanting to do. I mean, we had. To be very candid with you, and people in baseball know this. I mean, once we won, especially in a small market, we had a lot of opportunities to move on.
Oh, absolutely.
But we chose to stay here in Kansas City more out of personal reasons than professional, because the professional model says you move on.
Time to go.
You do. I mean, Bill Self was at Oral Roberts, then he was at Illinois, and then you won at all those places, and then you move on to the best job in all
you go from
college basketball
to the Yankees,
right,
or to the Reds, or back to those Red Sox.
And that's what the Andrew Friedmans did in Tampa. That's what Dave Dombrowski's always done, and that's what Pat Gillick would do. And John Shearholz did it. He left Kansas City to go to Atlanta, and I understand that that's the professional model. That's what you do. But from a personal standpoint, we wanted to be here in Kansas City. Now, I didn't expect ownership change to take place.
Exactly.
But that's okay. That's part of life. I've had a blessed baseball life here in Kansas City, and still plan to do more in baseball, and not only professionally but in this community as well. So it's all good. It's not anything I'm going to look back with any regret. I mean, certainly there's things that you could have managed differently, but I try not to let my mind go there and just stay in the present.
You can't, because that's behind you.
Yeah, you got to move on, Frank. You're right.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And it happened, and you were fired September of 2022, right after you were made president. Probably thought, okay,
I got impeached quicker than Trump. That's what I tell people. I said, heck, I became a president, and then I got impeached quicker than Trump. So.
That's pretty good. But you weren't impeached long.
Yeah.
Because the Texas Rangers came after you, right after. That had to make you feel, I mean, in a position like yours, or if you're the manager, or you're a head football coach, or you're a head whatever, you are in a position when you're hired to be fired.
Yeah.
That's just the way your business is, and that's something I think you accepted as being. I know you didn't want to get fired.
Yeah, I didn't.
And didn't really think, maybe getting fired back in 2022, I'd be out as GM and then I'm out of the Royals at that point. Well, they made me the president, so I'm thinking, I'm safe. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
But it just didn't work out.
Didn't work out.
No.
Didn't work out.
No. But that's just the way that it is. But the thing that you had talked about, and now you're working with the Texas Rangers and doing all those great things there. But the thing you kept bringing up was the fact you did not want to leave. You had opportunities to leave after you won in 14 and 15, and you just did not want to leave.
We had chances to leave in 17.
Right.
And, you know, I went and met with Mr. Glass at his house in Bentonville, Rogers, actually. And we sat together. We spent a day and a half together, and we talked about everything almost except baseball. And it was very clear that you know, he wanted me here and wanted me to stay.
Right.
And I told him, I said, Mr. Glass, as long as you want me here, because you were so patient with me, and you've been so supportive of me and my family and our baseball operations group, and you did everything you said you would do. As long as you want me, I will never ever leave Kansas. I don't want to leave the city. I don't want to leave the community. And you know, I want to continue to honor you. And then obviously his life changed as well.
Yeah, right.
And that's the way, you know, that's something what happens.
Right. And obviously all the things you're talking about Kansas City, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
For all practical purposes. There's just something about Kansas City, and you have then turned that into see in the major leagues. Explain what that mentoring program is and how wonderful that is. We were just there recently for the event.
Yeah.
Anytime, you know that, anytime for me and my wife, and just very, very impressed.
Yeah.
It's just an impressive organization and the things you've done, but you are turning this into. There's just something about Kansas City, and you're wanting to help people that could use some help. So
well, it is, and we first we started the See in the Major Leagues Foundation. Really, we had 4 pillars. We wanted to support education, family in crisis, youth sports, and faith-based organizations and events. Okay, and then it kind of developed into this mentoring program that Matt Folks directs for us. And, we have 20 kids in the mentoring program right now. It's our 5th year doing it. 16 of those kids have went on to graduate. So we have 16 college students. We've got great partner with colleges in our community like Avila and Benedictine and Mid-American Nazarene and some others that have been very Rockhurst and others that have been very supportive of us. So William Jewell, that will provide scholarships for our students that graduate. And we're constantly raising scholarships money for them, and we really try to just raise them and expose them to things that we'd want our own children to be a part of.
Right.
And the mentors have done a terrific job with our students, and most of these kids are we all need mentoring. It doesn't matter if you come from a disadvantaged area of our community or not. It doesn't matter if you have 2 parents in the home or you have a single parent.
Right.
And and we've got mix, right?
Right.
And so,
not everything in the suburbs is perfect.
That's right, exactly. And so we try to get a very diverse group together, and we do life together, and we're looking to expand over the next 4 to 5 years, where we want to take this program, expand maybe to 40 to 60 to 80, maybe up to 100 students. We'd like to take it to different parts of Kansas and Missouri, this model that we're doing, because it's working, and it's not rocket science. It's just like it's basically just showing up and letting someone know you care about what they're going through in life, and you become friends and you do life together.
How would someone try to get their child involved?
Well,
or that would need a mentor.
seeinthemajorleagues.org.
Okay. And that is the letter C.
Yeah.
In the majors. Yeah.
.org, and then contact Matt Folks, and then the other thing that we're doing, we partner with the Jewish Community Center, and we run our baseball camps, and we're looking to expand do baseball camps, See in the Major Leagues baseball camps. Before the Urban Youth Academy came involved, we were in the process of doing the See in the Major Leagues Baseball Academy. And the spirit of that was, how do we come alongside of young baseball players and families who can't afford travel ball? How do we subsidize that? And then I was approached by the folks that do the Urban Youth Academies out in Compton, when I was out in Compton, California. And they said, would you guys like an Urban Youth Academy here in Kansas City? And I said, yeah, we'd love to have an Urban Youth Academy here in Kansas City. How do we go about doing that? And so we put off the See in the Major Leagues Baseball Academy, and we focused on the Urban Youth Academy. And Mr. Glass was very supportive of that. Kyle Venna, who worked in our front office at the time, and I went to work, and we ended up raising, $21 million to get that facility built in Kansas City.
Off the ground.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
Generous group of people here in Kansas City got that done.
For
And a lot of our players pitched in too. I mean, Salvi, Alex Gordon, Chris Young, Mike Moustakas, Hosmer, Whit Merrifield, and others all donated huge amounts of money to get that thing built.
Yeah, I think they all enjoyed it here too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This was part of their time, be part of their legacy.
That's right.
Because I'm not sure any of them have gone. Have any of them gone on to win a World Series since they left?
No,
I don't think
been
they
in the
have.
playoffs,
Right?
but no.
Yeah, they haven't made the World Series.
Yeah.
So that memory that is indelible. And you're a Christian guy.
Yeah.
I know. I've known that from the beginning. I always have to watch myself around you sometimes.
No.
I always say, "Oh, there's Dayton." I know you've never been like that, but.
Yeah.
But it's you wear it on your sleeve, which is
Yeah.
great, and that's the part of the CU in the major leagues
Yeah.
is
It's
all about
faith-based.
that.
Yeah,
And I
it's
think
faith-based
it's
as well.
faith-based. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, the great thing about like I've said before, I'm a follower of Jesus, and the thing I love about Jesus is he's not looking at us in a judgmental way, and I make more mistakes than everybody combined on every given day, and I'm just thankful that I have that relationship that allows me. It tells me not to judge another person,
right.
come alongside of them in a non-judgmental way, just love on people, and that's all we've ever tried to do. I'm not perfect at it.
Yeah.
I try to settle disputes quickly with people. Some days I do, some days I don't.
Sometimes you yell on the phone, or some guy told you you just had a great year to win the World Series.
And the staff that I work with knows my flaws, and I've got a little potty mouth at times as well that I'm working on, and I'm in process. And so I think a lot of people. They look at someone who has a faith walk and they think that they've got to be. Well, I'm far from perfect.
You're right.
And I'm a sinner saved by grace, and that's just how I view life. And it's been free. It's freed me up. Just hey, I make mistakes like everybody else. I'm not perfect. I'm just trying to get it right. I want to be a husband. I want to be a father. Those are the most important responsibilities. Yeah. I want to be a good teammate. I want to be a good citizen of our community, and as long as I'm here.
Yeah, right. That's a life-work balance thing that everybody tries to achieve in life. But you seem to. I know you work on it every day, but it seems to work. Tell us a little bit about the kids.
They're doing great. It's a wonderful blessing. Ashley, our oldest, she's 27. She's a full-time missionary in the country of Panama. She's also a nurse.
Doing her dad's work a little bit.
Well, yeah, and she does medical missions throughout Latin America. She's part of a church plant there that's a growing church in a community called Costa Verde, which is about a half an hour outside of Panama City, a newly developed community. Avery Jane, our middle, just graduated from K-State last spring, and she's in the workforce, and she's still living at home, making some money, and we love having her around. And then our son Robert's 21, and he's trying
to make his way in baseball.
Yeah, he's with the Brewers in the minor leagues. Had a great time at University of Arkansas. Graduated early and put himself in the draft and came out as a sophomore, and he's loving what he's doing.
He's loving what he's doing. Yeah. Everybody's following along.
Good.
Yeah.
It's good.
I want to thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Frank.
You're
a good man. I appreciate
wonderful.
you. Thanks for always being so kind to me.
Well, you're a good man, and you know what? There's just something about KC, my friend. And
there you go.
That's important.
There you go. You're a big part of it.
Thanks for coming
Thanks,
in.
man.
All right.
Appreciate
Dayton
you.
Moore
Okay.
on our conversation today. Just something about Kansas City.